Welcome to the Pampered Thoughts podcast, where we are inspiring and encouraging women to love themselves as they are without shame or guilt, focusing on topics such as self-love, marriage and family, balance in life and business, and all things woman. Every week, we'll share inspirational topics that focus on helping you to overcome your struggles and limitations with lack of identity, low self-esteem, self-love, confidence, and so much more. I'm your host, Veronica, a wife, mom, speaker, entrepreneur, and more importantly, a daughter of the King. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the show. I hope you all had a grand and pampered week. I am ecstatic. My week was great. The Pampered Thoughts podcast has officially become global. Yay! Yes. We have reached outside of the US and landed in Canada, Ireland, Belgium, and as of Tuesday, Australia. Y'all, I am so stoked right now, and I'm so looking forward to when we reach all over the world. These are exciting times and amazing things are happening. So I'm sending a huge thank you to everyone who's listened in, who has shared the podcast, who subscribed to the podcast, and has supported the podcast. It means so much to me. I truly thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart. Well, what are we talking about today? We are talking about the comparison trap and why you need to beware of getting trapped in it. Yes, ladies, this is something that a lot of us can easily get caught in. I believe one of the reasons why is because society has tried to place certain expectations and standards on how we're to be as women, from our appearance to the goals we set for ourselves and even our success, to how we raise our children, how we take care of our husbands, our families, so on and so forth. There are so many expectations, but what are your expectations for your life? And who outside of our Creator decided that we all had to abide by these standards or these expectations? Now, don't get me wrong. I understand there are situations that require certain standards. For example, you have standards in school where you have to pass a standardized test to pass from one grade to the next. You also have employees that have to wear company branded uniforms so customers can know that they work there, that they represent that particular company. The Bible also has moral standards for how we're to live and treat others. I get it. Standards are a way of life. However, what I want to talk about is when it comes to your life, whose standards are you trying to keep up with? Are they your standards or are they your parents? Are they your co-workers, your friends, your families? Whose standards are you trying to keep up with? And today we're going to deal with that because many of us can go through life getting caught in the comparison trap because we're holding on to someone else's view of how we should live and we don't even realize it. We're looking at all these expectations that have been placed on us and we're trying to measure up. We're looking at others and how they live so that we can try to navigate our lives similar to theirs, or some people try to do better than others, and it shouldn't even be that way. But before we go forward, let's have a quick little sidebar, okay? Now, one thing you're going to learn about me through this show is that I'm a pretty transparent person when it comes to talking about my struggles and the things that I've gone through. And that's because I believe, really, how can I help someone else if I can't be truthful or open about my issues and what I've had to go through? And frankly, it's not going to happen. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not someone who's out here telling all my business in these here internet streets, okay? No, that's not me. And truthfully, there's only a select few that I actually allow into that space with me. So when you come to the Pampered Thoughts podcast, just know you're going to hear my stories, and this is a vulnerable space for me. I have to be honest. I'm completely and totally, with all of my human being, out of my comfort zone. I am totally out of my comfort zone because I am not the one to share all of my business with the world. But I have come to the conclusion that I'm okay with that. I don't mind being vulnerable and open if it's going to help someone else. My name is Veronica. Veronica, and it does mean true image or honest image. So basically, I always tell people that what you see is what you get with me. I'm sharing this with you so that number one, you can get to know me, and so you can know who you're listening to every week and why. But I also share this so that hopefully my story will help you see that you're not alone in this journey we call life. So when I share certain inner struggles that I've had, it's so you can know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, just as there was one at the end of mine as well. Not to say that I've arrived, but it's to say that I understand. Now that that little sidebar is out the way, let's get into the story. When I was 22 years old, I had already had both of my daughters. They were, I believe, 3 and 1 at the time. I was in the beginning stages of becoming a stay-at-home mom because, well, I had been fired from my job. My daughter was a preemie. My youngest daughter was a preemie and had some medical issues that she was growing out of, but there were still times when I needed to stay home with her. So I had missed too many days from work. Well, anyway, if you've listened to my welcome episode, you heard me say before that I was very reluctant to be a stay-at-home mom because number one, that was not in my plans for my life. And number two, there was a stigma around being a stay-at-home mom that I didn't want any parts of. You know, the stigma that says stay-at-home moms don't do anything but eat bonbons and watch TV all day. I grew up in the era of Married with Children where Peggy was a housewife. And if you grew up in that era, you know you know that I was not trying to be Peggy up in these streets. So that is definitely not how I wanted to turn out. And in my view, it was looking a lot like things were going that route. I remember one day going to the drugstore and I saw an old classmate of mine. She looked really nice and it was as if she was on her way to handle some business. She saw me and called my name. We both were happy to see each other because we hadn't seen each other since school. And so we hugged and I asked how things were going with her, how she was doing. We had been out of school for a few years at this point. I was excited to hear what she had been up to. She began telling me how things were working out for her in school and she was almost finished. She told me about her plans she was going to be doing next, and she also told me that she had seen other classmates of ours and how well they were doing and how their plans were falling into place. I was super proud of my old classmates and how they were excelling. I was glad to hear how they were starting in their new careers and finishing up with their degrees. However, deep inside of me, I was praying she wouldn't ask how things were going for me because in this moment, comparison started to peek its ugly head up. Deep down, I thought all I do is stay home with the kids. I haven't done anything worthwhile that would be worth sharing. So I prayed quietly, please don't ask me what I do. Please do not ask me what I do. Hearing her share their stories put a spotlight on the fact that I really didn't like my life. After we parted ways, I thought about how I was not happy. Yes, I loved my husband and my children. I knew I was blessed to have them, but in that moment, none of that was in the forefront of my mind or the reality of my emotions. Like what you've heard so far? Great. Make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you so much for your support. Now back to the show. Even though I was genuinely happy for my classmates, I was comparing my life with theirs because we were the same age, in the same graduating class, and with similar goals. I too was supposed to be getting ready to graduate college and on my way to having a career. However, I wasn't. I had to stay home while others were able to live their dreams. I was in my feelings because I felt like this is not what I wanted for my life. I had now been sucked into the comparison trap. Yes, I was trapped and I didn't even realize the effects it was having on me. I shared on my Instagram a couple of months ago, if you saw, at Veronica_Scurry, that comparison is only good for distracting you from your purpose. I truly believe that one of the fastest ways to cause you to lose focus on your personal journey and your purpose is by comparing yourself to others. At that time, this was very evident in my case. And I say that because as time went on, I got over being angry at God. Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. true, and you'll hear a little bit about that in a future episode. But as I was saying, as time went on, the Father began putting the spotlight on areas in my life I needed to work on, and comparison was one of those areas. While I was busy comparing my life to theirs and hearing how great things were happening for them, looking through the eyes of comparison didn't allow for me to see any of the great things happening in my life. It wasn't highlighted how I had a whole husband at home who loved me and was providing for me and his children. It wasn't highlighted how I no longer had to give my kids over to a daycare that for some strange reason couldn't explain exactly why my baby girl would come home ever so often with a scratch here and a bump there or a bruise that wasn't there when I dropped her off. The eye of comparison will have you devalue what's taking place in your life because you're holding on to some standard in your life that you feel you have to keep up with, whether it's trying to walk in your parents' footsteps or fulfill their plan for your life, or you're trying to appeal to a group of people who you hold a high respect for. No matter the standards you're trying to uphold, are they keeping you trapped in comparing yourself and comparing your life and comparing your purpose with others? If it keeps you in a state of constant comparison that leads you to negative emotions about your life and others, then it's time to break out of the trap and don't look back. A few pampered thoughts that actually helped me continue with not comparing myself with others was understanding the season you're in. Just like we have summer, winter, spring, and fall, our lives are the same way. Each natural season has its own characteristics, and each season in your life has its own characteristic. If you know your season, you know how to prepare for it. For example, when you know it's winter outside, for those of you who live in the snow, you don't try to go outside in the snow in your swimsuit. You know you're supposed to be cuddled up on the couch in a nice warm blanket and eating hot soup or chili. You recognize it's cold and you dress and you act accordingly. Now, one woman's season may be her summertime, so you'll see her in her swimsuit because that's her season. She's already gone through her winter months while you may be currently in your winter. Right now, you have to stay snug in your coat, in your boots, in your mittens, because if you don't, you'll catch a cold or you'll get sick. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying that we all have different journeys and we go through different processes at various times in our lives. For a time, my season was to be home to support my husband and to raise my children. Did that make me of less value because I wasn't out fulfilling my dreams? No. Did that make me less of a woman? No, it just meant that my dreams weren't aligned with my God-given purpose for that season and for that moment. During that time, both of my girls were diagnosed as having special needs. And as they got older, they needed a mom who was there for them, who could give them her undivided attention. They needed that extra attention that I wouldn't have been able to give them had I been going to school, working on building my career, or sending them off to childcare. It was my winter season. I had to be snug on the couch, raising my girls, supporting my husband by giving him a home of peace and solitude. So when he came home from a hard day's work, providing for me and our children, he could come home to a loving, caring, appreciative family with a clean house and a home-cooked meal. I was fulfilling my purpose for that time. And when I look back now, my dreams and my plans have completely changed since then. The things that I planned for at that time, I no longer want to do right now, because now I'm realizing the purpose that God has for me. And when you recognize what season you're in, it eliminates the feeling of having to compare yourself, and it helps you to stay in your lane. Some of the standards you may be trying to hold on to are from others' expectations of you and what they think you should be doing in your life. You're worried about what they're going to say or think if you don't make the right move. So you try to navigate life through their expectations. Listen to me, princess. That is not your business. That is none of your business. The things people say or what they think of you is not of your concern. Your concern should be fulfilling what God has created for you to do. If you don't know what that is, it's time to start doing some soul searching. It took me years to figure that out, and had I been less resistant to the changes He was making in my life, I would have found that out sooner. I didn't want to change or adjust my plans, which led me on a path of resistance that I later ended up having to yield to because had I not, I would have been miserable for a lot longer. Another thing is when you're busy walking in your purpose, you have no time to care about what others have to say or think of you and the path that you're on. You're focused on your journey, and staying in your lane keeps you out of harm's way. Similar to when you're driving down the road and you swerve over into someone else's lane, it's dangerous, right? So comparing yourself to others takes you out of your lane and puts you into the lane of the person or the people you're comparing yourself to. Because of this, you end up having a head-on collision. That was one of the issues I had looking at my situation through the eyes of comparison. I looked at how we were all the same age, graduating the same time, and they were doing some great things that I was really happy for. But from the world standards and expectations that I was trying to live up to, I felt like I was supposed to be in that number two. That caused me to devalue the fact that I was really already walking in my purpose for that moment. And if you notice, I keep saying for that moment, it's because your purpose can develop over time. For that moment, my purpose was for my family. I had to take care of the home. And there was also a time in that season where my purpose was for me to grow and to develop personally, spiritually, and emotionally. My purpose now has not only developed outside of my home and myself, but it's also developed through my experiences through the years to help others. And if I had continued to veer over into others' lanes, comparing my life to theirs, I would more than likely not be where I am today. And trust me, there is nothing wrong with staying in your lane, because when you look at comparing yourselves to others, it can either cause you to be prideful or lead you into depression. When comparison causes you to become prideful, you begin to look at others and say, oh, I can do that better than them. Or you find fault in what others are doing as if your way is the only way. You start looking down at others as if they're below you, not realizing that you're on a one-string parachute on your way to a huge crash landing, because the Bible says that pride comes before destruction and a haughty spirit comes before the fall. I've had moms tell me, I don't know how you do homeschooling. I just couldn't do it. I would lose all my patience. What they saw on the outside looking in was perfection and patience. What I saw on the inside some days and nights was crying and attitudes from both me and the kids. Comparison will literally distort your view of what's reality. It'll have you thinking one thing about a situation when in reality it's completely the opposite. I could have easily gotten prideful and thought I was the bomb with homeschooling because of the comments I had received. But I knew the real deal. I knew what lane I was in, and I knew that if God wasn't helping me with teaching these kids, we would all be jacked up. On the other hand, comparing yourself can also cause you to become depressed. It will magnify the negative emotions you are already feeling about yourself and your life. This was my outcome. I saw everything that I thought was negative in my life, and it was magnified to the umpteenth power because I was looking through the eyes of comparison and not through the eyes of wisdom. If you're trying to keep up with others' expectations and you're not truthfully living your life authentically the way you want to and the way you were designed to, it's time to go back to the drawing board. Let go of what others think of you and live your life. You'll feel so much more freer when you're living your life knowing that God has you right where He wants you. And if you're trying to compare yourself to others so that you can appear to be somebody of more significance or someone better than the next person, just know you're not living authentically either. That's a cover up, and it can only last for so long. You too also need to go back to the drawing board so that you can find the rest and the contentment on your path. Because not only can comparison lead you to becoming prideful or to depression, but it can also lead to jealousy, envy, and bitterness, which are just a few of the symptoms of comparison. Now, the Bible says we are not wise when we compare ourselves to others. God has designed each and every one of us with a purpose for a purpose. Ladies, we all have strengths. We all have weaknesses. So that puts each of us on the same playing field. We're just in different positions. Discover what season you're in for your life right now. Stay in your lane and do some soul searching. With the purpose the Father has for you, princess, you have no time to be comparing yourself with others. And if you're trapped in that place of comparison and you need help navigating this area of your life, or you need action steps to help you get moving in the right direction, reach out to me. As I've said before, we're in this thing together. This is a journey that I'm willing to walk alongside with you. I'll leave my contact info in the show notes. Until next time, Stop comparing yourself with others. Do some soul searching. Find out the season that you're in. Stay in your lane and stay pampered. Thanks for joining us this week on the Pampered Thoughts podcast. Be sure to visit us at www.pamperedthoughts.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or RSS, so you'll never miss a show. You can also check us out on Facebook and Instagram at Pampered Thoughts and on Twitter at I Am Pampered. As always, subscribe to the show to catch a new episode every week. And if you found value in the show, please leave a rating on iTunes and tell a friend about us. We want to continue to bring you the episodes you love. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, stay pampered.